Hello, everyone. My name's Mike Lathigee, and on the screen beside me, you see Ted.Thomas. Ted.Thomas is America's foremost expert on tax liens and tax deeds. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to come back and talk a little bit with Ted about tax liens and tax deeds in a webinar that we're going to be doing in a few weeks. For those of you who tuned in to my economic overview that I did in late January, I talked about what was going on in the world and the economy, and based on what was happening in the world and the economy, what you should do within your own individual portfolio. Now, I elaborated on a number of things. I talked about the fact that there isn't honest and transparent information being given to the public with respect to unemployment rates. The unemployment rate in the United States is really over 11%. It's not down below 7%, which the politicians are talking about. And the reason that they say that is 100% for political reasons. The reality is we have hundreds of thousands of people that drop off the employment workforce every month because their unemployment insurance checks ran out. In addition to that, what's been happening is we've seen the stock market have a tremendous run in 2013 and the wealthy become phenomenally wealthy. Now, that had very little to do, I believe, with fundamentals. It had everything to do with the fact that the S&P 500 companies have over $2 trillion in the bank, and what they were able to do is they were able to take that money, then go to the bank, use it as security, borrow a lot more money, and they were able to buy back a lot of their own treasury of stock. And what that did is that caused interest rates to stay very, very low, and it also caused stocks to skyrocket in value. And I'm very, very concerned because at some point in the future, the feds are going to have to stop the liquidity process, or what's referred to as quantitative easing number 3. And when that happens, absolutely 100%, interest rates are going to go a lot higher. Now, for those who did turn into the ball at the end of the month, I elaborated. My number one concern is the derivatives market. I'm not going to pretend to understand the derivatives market as an expert, but I will tell you, if interest rates get up around 6%, a lot of the derivatives trades go bad. And most of the major banks in the United States are leveraged at a factor of 20, 30, 40 to 1 on derivatives. And the problem with that is essentially, if interest rates go that high, we can see a number of the too big to fail banks, in fact, fail. And there's no way that the feds are going to be able to bail them out this time. And so there's a number of concerns that I have about what's going on in the world and the economy, and there's very, very few safe havens. One of the havens that I see is being able to take a small amount of money and turn it into something that has a great deal of security behind it. Now, what's going to happen, I believe, over the next couple of years is we're going to continue to see the middle class erode. The middle class continues to erode. We already know that more than 50% of Americans, more than 100 million Americans, are on some form of government assistance every single month. So what does that mean? That means with an eroding middle class, that those numbers are only going to continue to grow. There's going to be more stress on the finances. We know that Obamacare is going to basically make things very difficult for the middle class because their payments are definitely going up. Yes, the poorer class is going to benefit. The ultra-rich don't care, but what that's going to do is take more money out of their pockets. We also know when 2014 came in, 51 tax benefits were erased, and there's an introduction of 13 new taxes. So what that does is put a heck of a lot less money in the pockets of the middle class. What does that also mean? We're going to see a lot more defaults on taxes. We're going to see a lot more people get behind. Now, I don't necessarily like that. I don't want hardship for other people, but my responsibility is to my listeners, and my responsibility is to people who want to know what to do in these harsh economic circumstances. So that's why I wanted you to just briefly tune in and watch this brief update of what's going on our next webinar, which is going to happen on Tuesday, February the 25th at 6:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And Ted, talk a little bit about tax liens and tax deeds, and I've explained why I'm so bullish on the subject, and I've also explained why it's one of the very few safe places that people can go with what I see happening in late 2014, and basically I really believe we're going to see a major correction, if not a collapse, in 2015. So over to you.
Okay, well, let's start out with what you said about secure. And that's what people need to look for in investments right now. They want to have a secure investment. So we're going to talk about two things very briefly. One is a tax lien certificate, which is nothing more than a piece of paper like this. I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about tax deeds. So overall in the United States, across the states, there's 100 million properties. 2 to 3% of those properties are already going through some form of default. Now that means default on taxes. I'm not talking about mortgage default. 2 to 3%. So now you're talking about a lot of properties. People will not pay their taxes or they can't pay their taxes. Now I'm just talking about property tax. I'm not talking about income tax, sales tax, value-added tax. I'm talking about property tax. Well, there's a way to make a lot of money on this if you understand it and just learn a little bit about it. Now, this is all for layman people. This isn't for sophisticated investors. Very, very easy to do. All right, so first of all, about half of the United States, half of the states will sell what's called a tax lien certificate. Now, that's just a piece of paper that says somebody didn't pay the tax. The government will allow anybody to come in and pay the tax. Now, I say anybody, people from the UK, people from Australia, all the provinces of Canada. I've been teaching this same program in Canada for 13 years. So the people come here, they buy those certificates. Now, the certificate is secure. That's what Mike said. You need to look for secure investment. It's secured by the real estate. The beauty of buying a tax certificate is you either get paid or you get the property. Only two things happen if you buy a property tax certificate. One, you get paid. Two, you get the property. It's one or the other. Now, let me tell you what the interest rates are. They're phenomenal because these local governments want money. Now, what do they want money for? To pay for the roads, for the schools, for the hospital, and all those things. So they sell the certificate. Now, let me tell you how many there are. There's going to be millions. I'm speaking to you right now from the state of Florida. In Florida, in 2013, it'll be worse in 2014. 2013, 1 million, I want to use the exact number, 1 million people, 1 million property owners did not pay their property tax. That means the local governments, the county governments, if you're in the provinces, you probably call it a municipality, but a county government is going to issue these certificates. It's just a piece of paper, and you could have bought anybody can buy that certificate. That certificate pays up to 18% interest. So let's say you bought a certificate today, it stayed outstanding for a whole year, you make 18% on your money. That's how desperate they are for this money, okay? Now, each state has its own rules, and I won't get into the details, but that was one investment. It's called a tax lien certificate. Anybody can buy one. All you have to do to qualify is pay for the certificate. If you do buy a certificate, only two things can happen. You're going to get your money back, plus the high interest rate, or you're going to get the profit. It's one or the other. All right, now there's another system in place also. At the same time, the other half of the states, if they don't collect their taxes, they actually sell the property. Now, the first one is a little nicer for the people that don't pay, because a certificate, they can go in and pay it. But this one is ruthless. And here's what happens. In those half of those states, they actually sell the property, and the starting bid on the property is the back taxes. Now, I know that doesn't sound realistic, but here's how it works. Let's say now the property is worth $200,000. The local government only wants their tax, which is about 1%. They want their tax. So they send notice to the people that own the property. If the people don't pay, they also send at the same time, simultaneously, the bank gets a notice because they probably have a mortgage. They get a notice. They notice those people that if you don't pay your tax, we're going to auction the property. And they will, on a date set in time, they will auction the property. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, oh, Ted, there couldn't be many of those. Well, let me give you an example. When I teach the class, which I'll teach you later on, I'll show you a book that's this thick. That's about 2 inches thick of just Los Angeles County. Now, it happens in all 3,200 counties. They will auction those properties. So in Los Angeles County last year, they put up for auction over 7,000 properties. When the final auction took place, there was even properties left over people didn't buy. And the starting bid is the back taxes, and the mortgage is wiped out. So let me kind of review that. So here's what happens. People don't pay their tax. They get a notice from the government, the local government. This is local. It's done at what we call a county level. They auction the property and they tell what the property price is going to be, and it's going to be the back taxes plus any little penalties that might be in it. It's going to be the back taxes, and the mortgage is eliminated. It's completely off the property because the government, when they auction the property, they notify the bank, and the bank is wiped out if they don't come in and pay the tax. So you can buy those properties at any one of 5,000 auctions in 2014. Now, there'll be auctions over in New England states. There'll be auctions in Florida. There'll be auctions in Texas. There'll be auctions in California. We just had recently, and I'll give you a couple of quick examples. I just taught this class in Vancouver, British Columbia. And we had one man in Vancouver. He said, Ted, where should I go? I said, I want you to go. He said, I'm going to go to Seattle. I said, no, don't go to Seattle. I want you to go to Los Angeles. He said, oh, Ted, that's a 2-hour jet flight. He took the jet flight because I told him to. He went to Los Angeles. He bought residential land in Los Angeles County. He bought 5 properties. The tax assessor told him the value of those properties. Before he bought, he knew what the value was. The properties were valued at over $1 million. And he only paid $83,000. So he bought for 8 cents on the dollar in Los Angeles. He's a Canadian citizen. Another man from Vancouver decided he wanted to go to Snohomish County. So if you happen to be in Seattle, if you happen to be in Vancouver, you know that's Seattle. He went there and he bought a lakefront property east of Seattle. The value, tax assessed value was $150. $150 was the tax assessor. He paid $35,000. No mortgage on those properties. I can give you example after example, but you're getting the idea. So here, let me do a quick review. We're going to do classes, and we're going to teach you how to do both of these. How to buy tax liens, which is a piece of paper, very secure investment. You either get paid or you get the property. It will also teach you how to buy tax deeds, which means you're just raising your hand like I'm doing now. You raise your hand. The highest bidder gets the property, but the starting bid is just the back taxes. So you're starting to see this could be a pretty lucrative investment. Now, can I teach you everything I know in a couple of minutes of this video? No, I can't teach you everything I know in a couple of hours. But you're getting the idea. This is a system that works. Everything that I'm talking about right now is 200 years old. I didn't invent it. I just went and studied it for a year and a half, and then I've been teaching people for over 20 years. And so this is a good business for you to get yourself involved in. Once you learn how to do it, you can do it for the rest of your life. You can teach your kids to do it. You can teach your relatives to do it. You can get bunches of people together to do it. Or if you do it, Mike says, get a little group together and go do it that way. You can do it any way you want to do it, but now you're kind of getting there. So it's a great way for you to make money. You just got to get started. So I'll pass it back to you, Mike.
Yeah, two things I want to wrap up with is once again I'm going to encourage everyone to read the newsletter that I've sent you, where I talk about my outlook for 2014 and 2015. We are really going to see a middle class decimated, and there is going to be a heck of a lot more activity in Ted's industry. The other thing is I do want to share a personal story. 15 years ago, I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I bought 16 tax liens. What I did is I took a little different strategy. After 3 years, you're allowed to start the foreclosure process. So what happened? They were a lien. I bought them very close to 3 years where the people hadn't paid their taxes for 3 years. At that point in the 16, you serve anyone who has an interest in those properties, and then they have to pay you back within 60 days. If they don't, you can send your agent down to the courthouse to pick up your deed. 14 of the 16 ended up redeeming. The 15th was a piece of land. I bought it for a little under $3,000, and I ended up serving. No one responded, and I ended up getting the deed, and I sold it very quickly. It was worth about $18,000-19,000 was the appraisal. I sold it for 10 because I just wanted a quick profit. But my Grand Slam home run was a home that was behind on payments, and the owner was served, but he didn't really care. He was so deep in a hole. And one bank, Wachovia, had bought out another bank, and both banks thought that each bank was responding. Neither bank responded. So what happened, and this is the type of thing that happens in tax liens and tax deeds all the time. There's always wild stories as to why someone doesn't respond. So what happened at the end is the 60 days went by. I was literally for the last few days watching it very closely, calling my agent. Then I sent my agent in Tulsa on the 60th day down to the courthouse to pick up my deed. Now, in the ensuing month and a half or so, I had a little bit of legal expenses, and I had bought it for around $4,000. It brought me up to about $10,000. Then what happened? I owned the property free and clear. Everything was removed. Any mortgage, the whole bit, it was all removed. It was worth around $100,000, and I listed it right around the $90,000 range for a quick sale. I got the quick sale and made just a phenomenal profit. So I know the system does work. I know different people who've been doing it, and as I said, if you've been following my newsletter and what I've been writing about, I'm really looked at something that I felt is very safe and conservative and guaranteed, and something that with a number of years have gone by, I know that there's going to be a lot more pain and misery out there. And once again, it's not about, and I don't necessarily ever like taking any sort of, capitalizing on people's hardship. On the other hand, there are opportunities out there, and my responsibility is to those who want to be educated and know what's happening. So I'm going to encourage you to attend the webinar at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll start at 6:59 p.m. We always start on time on Tuesday, February the 25th. And at that point, Ted is going to do approximately 90-minute seminar online, just as you see right now, where he's going to actually go through the process of what this is all about. So, Ted, thanks very much. Do you have any other closing comments before we sign off?
Yes, just a couple of things. One of the things I'll show people when they come onto that webinar is how they can sit at home in Edmonton or Calgary or Vancouver, wherever they might be, and we're going to show them a tablet that's very much about this size tablet. Okay, and I know you think that's an iPad, but it's not. It's Android. And with that Android tablet, we have it programmed, and you can access every property and every tax sale in the United States, and you can actually buy tax lien certificates and tax properties while you're still in the Canadian provinces. So we'll teach them how to do that on that class, so they don't want to miss that. That'll be something they can sit at home and make money at their kitchen table.
Ted, I remember I did that 15 years ago plus, and, obviously there was nowhere near that level of technology as there is today. So it just becomes much easier to make money. And I have heard, and maybe you could verify, and then we'll sign off here, but I have heard that people don't even sometimes fly there. They simply are able to do it from on their laptops or their computers or the technology that you just described. Is that true?
Exactly. It's not unusual for people to buy tax lien certificates that way. We do tell them if they're going to buy the tax deed, that means you're going to get the property. You should either go look at it, or you should hire an agent, like a real estate agent or attorneys, paralegal, to get a picture of it, because you don't want to buy it. But we'll show them how to look at every property in the United States while they're sitting at home. We'll show them how to do that.
You got it. Well, look, Ted, I'm sure we're going to have great viewership for your workshop webinar on Tuesday, January 25th, once again at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I hope everyone appreciates. I'll be keeping Ted up, and he'll be starting at 10 p.m. Florida time that time. So, Ted, thanks so much for joining in, and we'll make sure everyone gets out this little short webinar so they know what they're going to learn. Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.